So this is a selection of 29 books that inspire me in a sense. So there's a few books that I've read, a few books that I want to read. They're on my list right now. So we're talking a few books that inspire my work as a photographer, and also just three records that inspire me in terms of like what I'm listening to and gravitating to at the moment. So yeah, the first 10 books here are books that I've read fairly recently. They're ones that have like a very like strong influence on me at the moment. All of them are kind of like in opposition to each other, which I find really interesting. But for me, reading is about like taking about like a little idea from one section a little to another and trying to apply it to your life in a sense. So that's kind of like what I'm interested in at the moment. There's 10 books that I haven't read. So these are ones that are like recent pickups for me. An interesting one here is the gentrification of the mind. So I was at this Nan Goldin exhibit at Gagosian in London, and this was like part of Nan Goldin's selection. So I'm pretty keen on like reading that. It was on my list for a while too, so it was cool to see it there. I try to support like smaller or local booksellers. So there's a few books here from Chez Moi, which is like a local seller here in Toronto. Also like supporting like small independent bookstores whenever I travel and things like that, and just picking up kind of like a more like a vintage version of a book, not necessarily like the first print or anything, but kind of something a little different than what you would typically find on like Amazon or like an Indigo or something like that. These four photo books have inspired me in a sense. Contact High, like I did this whole project back in the day where I was shooting a roll of film a month and developing it myself. And I was kind of like pointing to the idea of like, these are all the photos I took on this roll, but like here's the ones that I'm selecting, and like how you curate through photography is something I'm really interested in. Gordon Parks is like my favorite photographer. So this book, just like back to Fort Scott, like where he was born, and like, seeing that time in history is really interesting. And Japan, which is like Jamal Berger's book. I picked that up at his gallery at It's Okay. Jamal's like a cool dude. He runs Cake Back. I ran with him a lot this summer. And I just like a big fan of his work in photography and also the work he does in community. So I had to pick it up to support. This row here is a lot of books that kind of inspire the work of ABC. So we have like Unlicensed, which is like a book on bootlegging. After all, there is no finish line. That's kind of like the goal, is we're just like heading towards a direction, letting people kind of like engage with this space that I'm creating. The Ray Flyer kind of zine situation is like a lot of flips, a lot of bootlegs, things like that. And then like the ABC, like B-Mag, which is like pretty good for references and just seeing like what their content is and how I can kind of flip that in a way, like using like bootleg reference. The three records I picked were Love Supreme by John Coltrane, Marcus Garvey by Burning Spear, and then Donuts by Jay Dilla. So it kind of speaks to like three genres I'm like really gravitating to, which is like jazz, reggae, and then hip hop. A lot of them kind of like tied to like me personally, like just what I feel. And I think it like kind of like ties into the book as well. It's like discovering yourself in a way. Like there's a Love Supreme, it's all about love. It's in terms of like the book reference, Burning Spear. I think like that kind of speaks on like awareness and just like where I'm coming from essentially. And then Dilla is like the flip, essentially. Like how do you flip something? The thing I like about libraries is that they're very like eclectic spaces, and they're not just like solely for books. Like it's a really good community resource in terms of like having computers for people who don't have access normally to computers. There's like 3D printing software, there's like recording studios, all that kind of stuff. And I think like if I were to ever create a library and try to like follow along that vein of just not just being books, but having a place where people can kind of congregate and like creating like a hub in a sense. So we're curating a space here, recess, with a bunch of books, or like whatever the case is. Hopefully it goes well. Maybe it's something we can keep going with other creators as well. I'd love to see what other people are kind of reading, what they gravitate to. That's like kind of the reason for ABC, is for people to share their interests and like put people on game essentially. So I think the more that we can share and like kind of share like what influences us, what we're kind of gravitating to, the more we can get an understanding of other people, what our understanding of ourselves, kind of grow as people, and grow as a community. So yeah, I'm happy to be the first person to be doing this right now, and like I'm stoked to see where it goes.